Kevin and Ivy. We learned in Part 3A, 2 basic principles about the reality of our lives. In the first principle, we clarified our view of the reality of our true nature. We learned that all of us are born with a hidden consciousness or awareness within us. We are not aware of the presence of this awareness, and thus, live our lives in a deluded state created by our egoistic mind. We learned in the second principle that through meditation, we are able to grow out of the confines of our egoistic mind and connect with this awareness. When we are connected to awareness, our view of the reality of the present moment will be less biased by our egoistic mind, since awareness will be present in the background to prevent the egoistic mind from running wild. We will learn later from the monk, Rinpoche, that in addition to having a true view of reality and practicing meditation to live in the present moment, we have to apply both principles in the daily conduct of our lives, in order for us to grow and transform as enlightened human beings. I told you in Part 3A the meaning of Lao Tzu's uncarved block, which is the metaphor he uses for the egoless form of awareness. Due to its uncarved nature, the unprocessed state of a person will have a clearer vision of life and the world, unencumbered by the memories and prejudices of the egoistical form. Let us now see a video extract on the ancient Chinese concept of Wu Wei, or effortless action, as applied to Lao Tzu's uncarved block.
If we go even deeper, we arrive at the ego and emptiness. Because of past experiences, social conditioning, or ideologies, we have molded ourselves into knowledgeable, cultured human beings that fit the context they're in. This context could be a religious community, a country, or a profession. We generally see this as a good thing, but there's a downside. And this downside has to do with the ego. The ego often distorts how we perceive the reality of the world. When we approach a situation, for example, a conversation with a spouse, the ego tends to fill in the unknown gaps with all kinds of prejudices, fantasies, and convictions. The larger the ego, the more it will dominate the situation, subsequently closing us off from what's truly going on. Therefore, people with strong convictions experience great difficulty seeing the world in another light, or outside the confines of their intellectual prison. Hence, Lao Tzu urges us to return to a more unprocessed state, which he calls the uncarved block. We could see the uncarved block as a person who is unencumbered by all kinds of intellectual baggage, so his vision of the world becomes clear. Dr. Wui Lin Chong, a Dutch philosopher and sinologist, explains her interpretation of Wu Wei in a Dutch book about Taoist philosophy, emphasizing the element of emptiness or openness. She describes the essence of practicing Wu Wei as follows, and I quote, "And so, the whole practitioner is able to, from the clarity of his egoless center, observe all relevant forces in a certain situation in their being, undistorted, so he can respond to them flawlessly." End quote. So, if we look at Wu Wei this way, it's not just about letting go, going along with the flow of nature, allowing the universe to do its job. It's a much bolder move, for which we need a lot of courage. We have to be brave enough to let go of what we've learned, throw our normative frameworks in the trash, and flush our assumptions through the toilet. Or how Lao Tzu put it, and I quote, "Renounce knowledge, and your problems will end. What is the difference between yes and no? What is the difference between good and evil? Must you fear what others fear? Nonsense. Look how far you have missed the mark." End quote. Zhuangzi tells us a story about a conversation between Confucius and one of his pupils, Yan Wei. Yan Wei wanted to travel to the kingdom of Wei after he heard about its many problems and tyrannical ruler, so he planned to use his knowledge and wisdom to lecture the king of Wei and steer the kingdom into the right direction. Confucius persuaded Yan Wei not to do it, telling him that his plans were too ego-driven and wouldn't work. After all, no one is waiting for a know-it-all coming out of nowhere telling you how to take care of your business, let alone a self-absorbed tyrant. But still, Confucius offered an alternative, which he called the fasting of the heart. Confucius described the fasting of the heart as a form of meditation, which leads to letting our preconceptions go and making room to receive. With an open and receptive attitude, Yan Wei would learn about Wei and its king, their customs and beliefs. the situation as it plays out, and eventually be much more capable of lending a helping hand. In this understanding of Wu Wei, we let go of the ego so we can act in accordance with the situation at hand, as it is. We let things happen and act responsively, unrestrained by our limited preconceived ideas. Or, as Lao Tzu put it, we return to being uncarved blocks. Chong stated, and I quote, "No matter if it's about politics, governance, diplomacy, or any other activity, what Zhuangzi calls Wu Wei is this ultimate receptive and responsive way of action, from a crystal clear openness in yourself, one with the breathing of the cosmos."
Kevin, please summarize what the speaker says about a person's ego.
Yes, Joanna. The speaker says that because of past experiences, social conditioning or ideologies, we have molded ourselves into knowledgeable, cultured human beings that fit the context they are in. The context could be a religious community, a country, or a profession. We generally see it as a good thing, but there is a downside, which is the ego. The ego often distorts how we perceive the reality of the world. The speaker uses the example of a conversation between two people, where the ego tends to fill in the unknown gaps, with all kinds of prejudices, fantasies and convictions. The speaker says that people with a large ego and strong convictions experience great difficulty seeing the world in another light. They are stuck in the confines of their intellectual prison.
Ivy, please share the speaker's description of Lao Tzu's uncarved block and the concept of Wu Wei.
Yes, Joanna. The speaker says that the uncarved block can be seen as a person who is unencumbered by all kinds of intellectual baggage, so that his vision of the world becomes clear. The speaker gives Dr. Wo Lin Chang's explanation of the essence of practicing Wu Wei, as follows. And so the whole practitioner is able to, from the clarity of his egoless center, observe all relevant forces in a certain situation in their being, undistorted, so he can respond to them flawlessly. The speaker says that Wu Wei is just not about letting go, going along with the flow of nature, and allowing the universe to do its job. He says that it is a much bolder move that requires a lot of courage. We have to be brave enough to let go of what we have learned, throw our normative frameworks in the trash, and flush our assumptions through the toilet.
Kevin, please explain the concept of Wu Wei as applied to the advice Confucius gave to his student, Yan Hui.
Yes, Joanna. Confucius' student Yan Hui wants to travel to the kingdom of Wei because he plans to use his knowledge and wisdom to lecture the king of Wei on how to steer his kingdom in the right direction. Confucius persuaded Yan Hui not to do it, telling him that his plans were too ego-driven. His advice to Yan Hui is to practice meditation so as to let his preconceptions go. This will make room for him to receive information on the real situation in the kingdom of Wei, which will allow him to be more capable of offering help to the king of Wei. In this understanding of Wu Wei, we let go of the ego, so that we can act in accordance with the situation at hand. We let things happen and act responsibly, unrestrained by our limited preconceived ideas.
Thank you, Kevin and Ivy, for your sharing. We shall now listen to Mujiji and Peter Russell share their understanding of Wu Wei as applied to the life of a person, operating in the light of awareness, unencumbered by the memories and prejudices of the egoistical form.
You begin to discover the weakness, and you be where the weakness is, and you can see the mind. Then you can more discern the functioning that are right to happen. Like when you move in your life, naturally you're moving, the people you meet without planning, that's part of your cosmic activity. You understand that? Whatever you do, you go down the road, things you can never plan by the mind. These are called that which is ordained by God. That activity you will see when you pay attention to it, because everyone is living that, but not consciously. And what we do when those activities come, because they're not arranged, we tend to feel, no, I'm not in the time. I ain't got time for this, man. Because you prioritize your mental activities rather than your cosmic functioning. It makes sense, no? Doesn't it, like that? And so we begin to recognize more and more and cooperate with the cosmic functioning. And you find that your day happens in such a way that you could not have planned it any better than that. You find that somehow You say, wow, it's so fulfilling, I met so-and-so today. Yeah, but did you have arrangement? No, we just bumped into each other and we got talking and so much came up like that. Whereas the activity is like, no, I planned to do this, it never worked out, and I feel so frustrated, and it's not working, I don't see. And of course it's not working, because you want life to obey your personal projections. But life is flowing by itself. When I say that even this harmony is part of the total harmony, it means that even your mind projected activity is swallowed up in the cosmic activity, makes use of it, but you will not benefit from it. You will suffer it because you're not conscious of where it is useful. Where it fails for you personally, it succeeds by God's grace. He will use your malfunctioning to support something else that was the intention of the cosmic function.
If you're knowing who you are and you are coming from that state of inner contentment, then you're not needing to plan things so much. There's still a time for planning. Like if you're going to go on a holiday, you need to decide what dates you're going to go, what flights you're going to catch, what clothes you're going to take. So there's a role in which, planning still is important. If you just said, I don't know when I'm going on holiday, I don't know when you'll never go. If you don't book a flight, you'll never go. But so much of our mind is planning, well, supposing this happens, what would I do then? Or what would I do if I met the president? Or what would, we get into all these stories in our minds, and we exhaust ourselves with thinking, with planning, with working. And I think what the Course in Miracles says is the healed mind does not plan. And the healed mind is, for me, the mind that has stepped outside of the ego with all its planning and worries and trying to find happiness. When you've stepped outside of that, then you don't need to plan in order to find happiness. And then you're more open to seeing what's required. I call it spontaneous right action. You're in a situation, it's like, oh, this is what I need to do now. I look at my own life, and everything that's happened of any importance or significance in my life was not planned. It all came about through meetings, coincidences, unexpected events. I did plan, but none of that planning ever happened. It never came to. So all my planning was actually to no avail. And here I am. I've had a good life, but it's all come to me in various ways. And doors opened, and I said yes, or sometimes I said no. I made decisions as I went along, but I never thought I'd end up being a writer or this, or talking about consciousness, or doing stuff like this with you. Just that's the way things evolved.
Ivy, please share Mujiji's description of how a person should live their life with awareness as a witness.
Yes, Joanna. Mujiji says that once a person's awareness can start witnessing the mind, then he can more discern the purpose and cosmic functioning in the person's life, and cooperate with it. He says that when we prioritize our mental activities rather than our cosmic functioning, we will get frustrated when things do not happen the way we want it to happen. He says that it is because we want life to obey our personal projections, instead of letting life flow by itself, and we learn to adapt to it. He says that even the disharmony caused by our mind-projected activity can be part of the total harmony. What he meant by that is that even our mind-projected activity will be swallowed up in the cosmic activity, which makes use of it to achieve the cosmic purpose. He says that we will not benefit from it, but will suffer from it because we are not conscious of where it is useful. He says that where it fails for us personally, it succeeds by God's grace. God will use our malfunctioning to support something else that was the intention of the cosmic functioning.
Joanna, can you please explain what Mujiji means by the intention of cosmic functioning?
Yes, Kevin. What Mujiji means by the intention of cosmic functioning is that there is a purpose why we are here, living and playing the game of life, metaphorically speaking. We are supposed to evolve and transform to become enlightened human beings. The daily activities that happen in the course of our lives, what Mujiji calls cosmic activities, are challenges in the game of life that we have to play. If we are able to live our life in the light of awareness, we will be more sensitive to the purpose of the challenges that life gives us. We will then be able to make the right decision on how to deal with those challenges, learn and grow from them.
I understand now why Wu Wei is also known as effortless action. We should be sensitive and try to discern the purpose of the cosmic activities and challenges happening in our life. By cooperating with our cosmic function and life purpose, we will exert the least effort in learning the lessons that life wants to teach us.
If life is like a game, then I guess if we don't learn from a given challenge, we will continue to encounter similar challenges, until we learn before we can make progress to the next level.
Yes, Kevin, you may notice that may be the case. Can you please share what Peter Russell says about planning for life when a person operates from the state of inner contentment, or in the presence of awareness?
Yes, Joanna. Peter Russell says that if we live our life from the state of inner contentment, then we do not need to plan things so much. He clarified what he meant by too much planning, as the mind planning for different scenarios and situations that may happen in a person's life in the future because of worries. They exhaust the person's minds with worries. He says that a healed mind is one that has stepped outside of the ego with all its planning and worries, and trying to find happiness. He says that when a person has stepped outside of the ego, then he don't need to plan to find happiness, and will be more open to seeing what actions are required. He called that spontaneous right action. He says that is how he lives his life, and that he makes decisions as he go along in life, based on spontaneous right action.
Thank you, Kevin and Ivy, for your sharing. Let us see another video clip on the concept of Wu Wei that explains and summarizes Mu Gigi and Peter Russell's experiences.
Probably the most common interpretation of Wu Wei is quite literally aligning our actions with nature and not forcing anything and acting when it's suitable. Lao Tzu stated that using force always leads to unseen troubles. With force, he doesn't seem to point to literal use of force per se, but rather to forcing the flow of nature. Nature has its course. It's always working in the background. It lies at the root of our humanity's existence and continually creates and recreates what the Taoists call the 10,000 things, everything under heaven and beyond. But despite the immense propulsion of the universe, today's society places the importance of conscious human effort above all. We celebrate effort, regardless of its actual effectiveness, as we aim to always be busy for the sake of being busy. As modern Sisyphuses, we push rocks uphill just for the sake of pushing. Making an effort is one thing, but intelligently making an effort is another. Yes, sometimes hard work is necessary and action is appropriate, but on many occasions, it isn't. It depends on the rhythm of the game, on the cards you're dealt, and whether or not it's your turn. Acting out of turn means going against the flow of the game. Hence, we often experience that forcing things leads to ruin in the long run, and that pushing our luck beyond nature's constraints backfires. On the other hand, situations often solve themselves when we don't force or intervene. By letting things happen, things get done naturally. The novice farmer, for example, simply needed to leave his crops alone and be patient, and nature would do the rest. But when it's time to reap, the farmer should roll up his sleeves. The Tao never acts with force, yet there's nothing it cannot do, Lao Tzu stated. If you would just go along with nature, then everything runs smoothly. The farmer's task is to sow the seeds. The seed's task is to grow into crops. And then the farmer's task is to reap the harvests when they're ready. This is how nature works optimally. Lao Tzu believed that the world cannot be governed, as the world governs itself. It's entirely out of control. Trying to control it is always a losing battle. And spending our lives fighting against nature is a waste of time, no matter how much people celebrate us for engaging in such heroic endeavor. Instead of spending our life energy trying to control, govern, and change the natural course of things, we're better off accepting what is and navigating through it like water flowing through a rocky surface towards the ocean.
Ivy, please share some key points from the video.
Yes, Joanna. The speaker says that the most common interpretation of Wu Wei is aligning our actions with nature, and not forcing anything, and acting when it is suitable. He quotes Lao Tzu, that states using force against the flow of nature always leads to unseen troubles. The speaker says that nature has its course and is always working in the background. It lies at the root of our humanity's existence and is continuously creating and recreating things. I guess this is what Mujiji meant by cosmic activity and functioning.
Yes, Ivy. You are correct. Mujiji's cosmic activity and functioning refers to nature's activities and functions. We are all a part of nature and must learn to live in line with nature's flow and rhythm.
The speaker says that today's society places too much importance on conscious human efforts. He says that we celebrate effort, regardless of its actual effectiveness, as we aim to be always busy for the sake of being busy. The speaker says that sometimes hard work is necessary and action is appropriate, but on many occasions it isn't. He says that it depends on the rhythm of the game, on the cards we have been given and whether or not it is our turn. He says that acting out of turn means going against the flow of the game.
I guess that is what Peter Russell meant by spontaneous right action. He makes his decision according to the rhythm in the game of life, based on the cards given to him to play. All he needs to do is to play his part within the overall cosmic activity and functioning.
Yes, Kevin. You are correct. Peter Russell says that when a person lives in the state of inner contentment or awareness state, the person has stepped out of the ego, and will be able to make decisions that flow with the rhythm of life, instead of against it.
The speakers say that we often experience that forcing things lead to ruins in the long run, and pushing our luck beyond nature's constraints often backfires. On the other hand, situations often solve themselves when we let things happen and things get done naturally. The speaker uses the example of a novice farmer who needs to sow the seeds and leave his crops alone to grow naturally. Be patient and nature will take care of the rest.
Let us find out from the monk, Rinpoche, the 3 factors that are required for a person to fully transform into an enlightened human being.
If you want to really completely transform, need 3 things: view, meditation, conduct. So these 3 things very important. You need 3 together. So some people, maybe they're fascinated by view of meditation, view of spiritual path, whatever. That's so nice. Then they stuck there. So they don't meditate and they don't apply this view and meditation in daily life, the conduct. So conduct is missing, the meditation is missing. So you will transform certain limit by view. It may help you and really good for you, of course. Then you're stuck. So you cannot transform unlimitedly. So then next, what we need is meditation. It's very important. Some people, they begin with the meditation. They don't have much idea, and then they don't have the view, they don't understand too much. They just follow instruction, don't know why and how, just follow. It helps. And people really like, and it will transform. It will good for you, benefit for you. But after some time, without view, without conduct, again will stuck. So don't know, and maybe might have many doubt, and then keep quiet, I'm meditating. I don't like that sound. Become like that. Angry and meditate, okay. But only benefit on the cushion. So out of cushion, anger come back again. So you will stuck. And some people, they like conduct, ethical behave, discipline, morality. Wow, nice. I want to do that. I want to help others. So, and that really helps, of course, transform. But only that, again, cannot transform unlimited. So, this only by this, out of 3, only one only, always there's limitation. So if you want to change complete, you need 3 together. So what is view? View is to understand why, how, what, and what is the nature of the reality. So there are many view, the relative reality, absolute reality. so on, so on. So you have to know the view in the meditation. So and the second is the meditation. Meditation is directly deal with the view is dealing with the sometimes what I call dealing with head, and the meditation is dealing with heart directly. So how to deal with the feeling and emotion? Normally most important is we need the meditation. Why and how and what, those things sometimes cannot help directly to the emotion and feeling. So dealing direct to the emotion and feeling is the meditation. What is the meditation? Awareness. So recognize awareness and practice awareness. Exercise to develop awareness. So conduct. Now third is conduct is applying this view and meditation in daily life, especially with the problem. Have these three together, then it really you can transform and really benefit for you.
Kevin, please share with us the key points from Rinpoche's talk.
Yes, Joanna. Rinpoche says that if we really want to transform into enlightened human beings, we need three things, which he calls view, meditation, and conduct. He says that a person needs to understand and practice all the three things to be able to continuously grow and transform as an enlightened human being. He says that knowing and practicing only one or two things will only limit the person's growth. He gives the example of a person who may be able to meditate by just following instructions, but do not know the why and how of the process of human transformation. He says that the person may be able to get some benefit from the meditation, such as stress release, but it will be limited to when they are sitting on their meditation cushion. He says that the view is related to head knowledge, that is to understand the why, how and what is the true nature of reality. He says that meditation deals with issues directly related to the heart, such as emotions and feelings. He reminds the audience that the essence of meditation is to practice recognizing awareness. He says that conduct is applying the understanding of the view and the practice of meditation in daily life.
Joanna, can you please explain how the view in meditation helps a person in transforming their conduct in daily life?
Yes, Ivy, the view gives a person the reason and motivation for the way they conduct their daily life, as they embark on their spiritual journey of transforming into enlightened human beings. There are various views of the reality behind the spiritual world. Each of the major religions in the world, such as Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism, has a view of what that reality looks like. However, they all share a common spiritual theme and aspiration for their followers, and that is for them to transform into enlightened human beings in their daily conduct of their lives. The practice of meditation helps a person escape from the confines of their egoistic mind, and help them see their conduct from the broader perspective of an observer, which is awareness. As we have learned from Mujiji and Peter Russell, a person that is anchored to awareness will be practicing the principle of Wu Wei. They will be operating from the clarity of their egoless center, observing their daily life situations in a state undistorted by the biases and prejudices of their ego, so that they can respond to them in a way that is in harmony with nature.
Joanna, what are the undesirable character traits that needs to be removed for a person to be transformed into an enlightened human being?
Let us listen to Minda Kumar explains what are the key undesirable character traits of a human being that the Buddha has identified more than 2,500 years ago.
The Buddha said the main thing we fail to realize is that happiness doesn't actually come from external phenomena, but that it comes from within our own minds. And that if we purify our minds of the defilements, such as anger, jealousy, and pride, then everything external will appear perfect, because we will have eliminated the very cause for our dissatisfaction, which were the defilements, and the main culprit among them being our own craving. The Buddha actually listed 16 defilements that our minds could experience. He said, "And what, monks, are the defilements of the mind? Covetousness and unrighteous greed are a defilement of the mind. Ill will is a defilement of the mind. Anger is a defilement of the mind. Hostility, denigration, domineering, envy, jealousy, hypocrisy, fraud, obstinacy, presumption, conceit, arrogance, vanity, negligence is a defilement of the mind. Now from that list, you can see that many of these defilements are actually similar in nature, so they're often grouped together to form the 5 major defilements of the mind, these being craving, hatred, jealousy, pride, and ignorance, which are also known as the 5 kleshas or the 5 poisons, and they can be further reduced down to form the 3 unwholesome roots, which are craving, hatred, and ignorance. Basically, because all the multitude of negative thoughts that can arise in our mind will spring from one of these major 3. The Buddha really taught that all our misery in the world is really due to our minds experiencing these defilements. And unfortunately for us, our minds are predominantly always in one of these 3 states. It's either craving for some future happiness we hope to achieve, we're feeling angry about something, usually because our desires haven't been met, or we're looking outside of ourselves for happiness in external phenomena. And if we're doing any one of these 3 things, our minds will be agitated, unhappy, and dissatisfied. So the panacea the Buddha prescribed for all our mental sorrows was to follow his teachings, which really are a path of purification, to purify our minds of these defilements and our negative karma. The Buddha said, to avoid all evil, to cultivate good, and to cleanse one's mind, this is the teaching of the Buddhas. So by following the Buddha's teachings of practicing pure moral conduct, meditation and wisdom, these will help us to reduce and eliminate our negative karma and defilements of the mind, and to increase our positive karma and positive mental states. And as we continue to practice these 3 foundations of morality, meditation and wisdom, what it culminates in is a purified mind that's free of craving, hatred and delusion. In essence, a mind free of the defilements. But this is where our effort comes into play. We need to actually put the teachings into practice if we want to diminish these defilements and their hold over us. But if we continuously make effort to practice morality by practicing right action, right speech, right thought, and practicing meditation and wisdom, slowly but surely we will bring to the surface this luminous nature of our mind. For the average person who hasn't been introduced to the true nature of their mind, and they have no idea of what actually lies within them, they have no incentive to practice morality, concentration or wisdom, so there is little or no development of their minds towards liberation or freeing it from the constraints of the defilements. Instead, these people will continue to be trapped in their ignorance and believing that happiness lies outside of them. Whereas for the person who has been given the teachings on the mind's luminous nature, and they're now slowly starting to release the grasp of the defilements on their mind, they will have some small glimpses of the mind's tranquil and blissful nature, and their minds will develop towards freedom and liberation of the defilements entirely. Now, the luminous nature of our mind is said to increase the more we practice morality and meditation. It's almost like each time we meditate, we're slowly scraping away the karma and defilements and allowing the luminosity of the mind to become more apparent.
Ivy, please share with us the undesirable human traits that Buddha has identified more than 2,500 years ago.
Yes, Joanna. Minda says that Buddha taught that all the misery in our world is really due to our minds experiencing 16 defilements, which are the undesirable human traits that Buddha identified. Since many of them are similar in nature, she says that they can be grouped into 5 categories, which are craving, hatred, jealousy, pride and ignorance. The 5 categories can be reduced to 3 major unwholesome roots, which are craving, hatred and ignorance. This is because all the multitudes of negative thoughts that can arise in our minds will spring from one of the 3 major roots.
I can see that all the 5 categories of defilements are associated with our ego. Our ego craves for things and attention from people. It hates losing to other people, which gives rise to jealousy or pride. Also, it is ignorant of awareness, which helps a person make decisions from an ego-less, observer perspective.
Yes, Kevin. You are correct. All negative thoughts arising from the ego comes from the ego's obsessive likes, which is craving, or obsessive dislikes, which is hatred, and from the ignorance of awareness, which allows the ego to live in its own delusion. Ivy, what did Minda says about the teachings of Buddha?
Minda says that the teachings of Buddha can be summarized into 3 things: to avoid all evil, to cultivate good, and to cleanse one's mind. She says that Buddha's teaching is a path of purification, which is to purify the minds of the defilements. She says that Buddha's teaching of pure moral conduct, meditation and wisdom, will reduce a person's negative karma and defilements of their mind, and help to increase their positive karma and positive mental states. I guess the word wisdom refers to the view that Rinpoche mentioned earlier. Joanna, it looks like in life we cannot escape from developing an ego, which is the identity molded by our parents, and the society and culture in which we are born into. We are all born into the darkness of ignorance of our true nature, and thus suffer from that ignorance.
Ivy, you are correct. As human beings, we are all born into ignorance of our true nature, and needs to evolve and transform into enlightened human beings. That is the goal of all major religions, to awaken all human beings to their true spiritual nature of awareness, and lead them away from the delusion of their egoistic mind.
Joanna, is it harmful to have healthy self-esteem even though it is still ego-driven?
Kevin, let us listen to Eckhart Tolle explain the relationship between healthy self-esteem and the ego.
Eventually, what you call healthy self-esteem, which is a wonderful thing, eventually that is not enough. And as a human being evolves, that healthy self-esteem is no longer satisfying as you grow older and is transcended. And what takes its place is healthy, no-hyphen self-esteem. The self-esteem, of course, means that you are reasonably satisfied with who you are as a person and the achievements of the person, what the person can do, or what the person knows, or what the person possesses. And you compare what the person can do, abilities, what the person knows, knowledge, or what the person has in terms of possessions. You compare that with others, and you come out favorably. So either you can do more than somebody else or others, just feel better about yourself. I can do this, but they can't. I can, but you can't. Or you have more knowledge. Did you know that this in such and such is such and such a case? You didn't know that? Well, let me tell you. That feels good. You know more. These ignorant people, they don't know anything. Or you have more. How many bedrooms does your house have? 4? Well, we have 11. Do you have an advanced degree? No, I have 2 PhDs. And that's fine it starts with a child already. It says, look what I can do. I can jump further than you. And then for the child, it's fine. There's no point in telling a child, don't do that, because your ego is arising. No, the child has to go through that. And it is better to have healthy self-esteem, as you describe it, as it's usually described, than extremely low self-esteem. I'm no good. Everybody's better than me. I have nothing. Life has treated me unfairly. There's a self-image there also, as there is a self-image in healthy self-esteem. One, of course, is much nicer than the other. It's more pleasant to live with healthy self-esteem than with a low self-esteem, or unhealthy self-esteem, one could call it. But they're both identification with some kind of form. And you compare the form of who I am with the form of others, and you are better, at least in one area, you must be. And that's satisfying, but you're trapped in form, and you're depending on, for your sense of value or worthiness, you're depending on, ultimately, to put it bluntly, others who have less or know less or can do less than you. And that's fine. Doesn't mean you shouldn't strive to do great things or to have things or to know things. But the question is, ultimately, is that a satisfying basis for your sense of who you are? And in the long term, it is not. It is not satisfying.
Kevin, please share the key points from Eckhart Tolle's talk.
Yes, Joanna. Eckhart Tolle says that as a human being evolves, having a healthy self-esteem will no longer be satisfying as we grow older. Eckhart describes what people generally associate as healthy self-esteem when they compare themselves with other people, and they come out favorably. He says that the comparison can be in terms of what the person can do, what the person knows, and what the person possesses. He says that when the comparison is not very favorable, the person may suffer from unhealthy low self-esteem. He says that both healthy self-esteem and unhealthy low self-esteem are identification with some kind of form, comparing the form of who I am with the form of others. Thus, he says that the person is still trapped in the form, and depends on it for their sense of value or worthiness. He says such comparison depends on others having less or can do less than you. He asks the question whether healthy self-esteem can be a satisfying basis for who we are, and he says that in the long term, it is not.
Eckhart says that it is natural for a child to go through the ego-defining phase of their lives, and that it is better to have healthy self-esteem than unhealthy low self-esteem.
Yes, Ivy, as I said earlier, we are all born into ignorance of our true nature, and needs to evolve from our egoistic self and transform into enlightened human beings. Let me share with you a message from a Sufi Muslim by the name of Ihsan Alexander, on what it means to be born as a human being into an existence in the egoistic form, only to realize that the path back to peace is in the undoing of the self, or the ego. Ihsan Alexander says that, as a child's mind develops, and an identity is taught and reinforced, it progressively develops the ego, which by the time one reaches adolescence, becomes quite a challenge, which creates the teenage drama. He says that this is the circle of life, to fall from grace and innocence into a veiled existence in form, only to realize that the path back to peace and paradise is in undoing the self, the ego. He says that we have to wake up and begin the spiritual journey of self-purification, the purification of the self from the self. Let us listen to what Ihsan Alexander explains what is spirituality from the perspective of a Sufi Muslim. He says that Sufism is simply the spiritual dimension of Islam, and its goal and aim is the purification of the self so that nothing but spiritual excellence remains.
As human beings, we're all wounded fundamentally in our core. It's part of life on earth. And through spirituality, you can transcend the suffering that plagues humanity. Through spirituality, you can heal your life. And the ultimate source of healing is the divine presence. It's Allah Almighty. And only through spirituality can we approach the divine presence of God. Also, through understanding, applying, and living spirituality, not only do you heal your life, your personal life and environment, but you contribute to healing the entire world, your family, your friends, your community, the world at large. The world is dying from a lack of spirituality. It's drowning in materialism. And this is taking place within religion as well as without religion. Simply being religious does not mean a human being is spiritual. In fact, religion without spirituality can often become the very antithesis of its purpose. Religion without spirituality, without its inner dimension, without its essence, without its soul, without its spirit, is literally empty. It's just a form. Yet through spirituality, we attain the true purpose of religion. Where religion becomes beneficial, becomes healing, it becomes purposeful, it becomes a source of light and goodness in the world. Each healed soul is a source of light and grace for others, for everyone around them, for your family, your community, the world itself. The danger of not understanding Sufism or spirituality and not applying spirituality to one's life is that we can fall into an imbalanced religious practice. Without spirituality, both life and religion become heavy and burdensome, a trial, a constant struggle. Life and religion without spirituality becomes a path of force and struggle. It is non-conducive to develop, and it is not conducive to peace. It is not conducive to evolution of consciousness. Life and religion without spirituality is literally uninspired, lacking spirit. It becomes a path dominated by the ego, by ego mind, ego consciousness. And without a proper understanding of Sufism and spirituality, we can easily fall victim to corrupted teachings, to corrupted paths, those which are harmful to you, to the self, to your soul and spirit, as well as to other human beings, as well as to all other life forms. And without spirituality, there's a progressive loss of purpose. We progressively lose purpose in our lives. Spirituality is a path that is continually ascending. It is continually taking us forward, higher and deeper. Yet without spirituality, without Sufism, without Tasawwuf, life becomes, and the path becomes, the way becomes lacking purpose. There is no progress, there is no movement. And without spirituality, by failing to adopt, to practice, to embrace, to honor spirituality in our lives and in our religion, religion becomes harmful rather than helpful. It becomes destructive rather than healing. Religion without spirituality is dominated by mind, dominated by ego, and that means it is dominated by fear and anger. Rather than give life, it then ends up taking life. Yet that is not its purpose, that is not its true purpose. Never was, especially in the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And without a spiritual understanding, without a grasp of spirituality, we're literally unable to pass anything of benefit on to others or onto our children. True knowledge, true realization, true wisdom is in the heart, it's in the soul. And a way of the heart, spirituality is the way of the heart, is necessary to pass on wisdom, knowledge, true learning to others, to your own children. True knowledge comes from experience, real experience, and it is passed from heart to heart, not from books.
Ivy and Kevin, please share what are the key points from Ihsan Alexander's talk.
Yes, Joanna. Ihsan says that as human beings we are all fundamentally wounded at our core. He says that is part of our physical life on earth, and that through spirituality we can transcend the suffering that plagues humanity. He says that through spirituality we can heal our life, and that only through spirituality can we approach the divine presence of God Almighty, which is the ultimate source of healing.
He says that the world is dying from a lack of spirituality. It is crowning in materialism, and this is taking place, both within religion and outside religion.
Joanna, can you please clarify what Ihsan means by spirituality?
Yes, Ivy. Ihsan was trying to explain what is the meaning of Sufism in the context of the religion of Islam in the 37 minutes video from which the extract was taken. He defined spirituality as equivalent to Sufism, which to him, is the spiritual dimension of Islam. He says that the goal and aim of Sufism or spirituality is the purification of the self.
Now I know why he says that simply being religious does not mean a human being is spiritual. He says that religion without spirituality, without its inner dimension, without its essence, without its soul, without a spirit is literally empty. He says that it is just a form, and that through spirituality we can attain the true purpose of religion, which is to be a source of healing, light and goodness in the world. He says that each healed soul is a source of light and grace for others, and for everyone around them, including their family and community.
Ihsan says that without spirituality, both life and religion become heavy and burdensome, and will be a trial and a constant struggle. It will not be conducive to the development of peace and the evolution of consciousness.
Ivy and Kevin, do you notice any similarity with Ihsan's explanation of spirituality in Islam with awareness or consciousness?
Yes, Joanna. Ihsan says that life in religion without spirituality is literally uninspired, lacking in spirit, and will become a path dominated by the ego mind, ego consciousness. He says spirituality is a path that is continually ascending, taking us forward, higher and deeper. He says that religion without spirituality is dominated by the mind, and thus dominated by the ego. He says that means it will be dominated by fear and anger, and then rather than give life, it will end up taking life.
So what Ihsan meant by a spiritual person is a person who is transformed by being connected to their inner consciousness, or awareness. He says that only through understanding, applying and living spirituality, can we heal our personal life and our environment, and also contribute to the healing of our family, friends, community and the world at large.
Joanna, I notice that Ihsan is stating the same 3 factors that the monk, Rinpoche, stated earlier that are required for a person to fully transform into an enlightened human being. Ihsan says that understanding, applying and living spirituality are all required. His term for understanding of spirituality is equivalent to Rinpoche's Buddhist view of what is consciousness. His term for living spirituality is equivalent to Rinpoche's meditation or in the state of being connected to awareness, and his term for applying spirituality is equivalent to Rinpoche's conduct, or trying to live a life free from the 5 major categories of defilements associated with an ego-driven life, that Minda Kumar described earlier.
Yes, Ivy. You are correct. If you strip all religions of their external rituals and dogmatic views which differentiate them, and thus divides humanity, and focus on the 2 essential goals for their believers, that is a spirit-filled life to empower a spirit-driven living, you will see that they are all the same. All religions want their believers to give priority to a spirit-driven life, instead of an ego-driven life. For the believers to get the power to start their spiritual transformation into enlightened human beings, they need to wake up from the delusion of their egoistic nature. I would like to repeat Ihsan's quote, which is that humanity has fallen from God's grace and innocence into a veiled existence in the egoistic form, and has to find the path back to peace and paradise, by the undoing of the self, or the ego. Thus, we can say that the starting point for our existence as human beings in this physical world, is to be lost in the delusion of our egoistic self. Our mission and goal in life is to discover our true nature, and get connected to awareness or consciousness, which is the equivalent of a spirit-filled life in religious vocabulary.
I guess all the different dogmatic views and religions are the product of the human ego, which craves to differentiate themselves, like what Eckhart Tolle said, "Mine is better than yours," so as to satisfy the ego's need for pride. Ihsan says that without a proper understanding of spirituality, a person can easily fall victim to corrupted teachings that are harmful to the self, to the soul and spirit, as well as to other human beings and other life forms. He also said that without spirituality there will be a progressive loss of purpose in our lives. He also said that failing to practice and honor spirituality in religion can become harmful, and can become destructive rather than healing.
He stated that spirituality is the way of the heart, and that true knowledge comes from experience, and is passed from heart to heart, not from books.
I guess what Ihsan meant by heart is that unless a person is connected to awareness and experience true spirituality-driven religion, rather than the ritualistic, dogmatic form of religion, they will be unable to grasp the true meaning of spirituality. For a person to be able to pass on wisdom, knowledge and true learning to others, they have to discover their true nature of awareness, and is on the path of transformation into enlightened human beings.
Thank you, Kevin and Ivy, for your excellent discussions of Ihsan's talk. We shall explore in part 2 of this video the meditative practices of a few religions to understand their similarities and differences. We shall also learn a little bit of the views of each religion, which give their believers the motivation to search for connection to their true spirit nature, and start their spiritual transformation into enlightened human beings.